It seems almost absurd that in 2025 the Iron Lady should become the subject of romantic conjecture, yet here we are. A new book by Tina Godwin, the incidental feminist, claims that Margaret Thatcher had not one, but two extramarital affairs, one early in her parliamentary career, another later with the Conservative MP Sir Humphrey Atkins. Now, just to be really blunt, these claims are entirely unsubstantiated. Charles Moore, Thatcher's authorised biographer and the man with the deepest access to her private papers and correspondence, has said bluntly that there's no evidence whatsoever for such affairs. He even called the suggestion vanishingly unlikely. And Charles Moore, who devoted nearly 2 decades of his monumental 3-volume biography, 2 decades to writing that monumental 3-volume biography, is not a man given to squeamishness or omission. If there were proof, he would have printed it, and he had access to the papers, the private letters that she wrote to her sister. Kwasi Kwarteng, who has written perceptively about Thatcher's political legacy. In fact, I would say one of the most thrillingly written pieces of accounts of Thatcher's politics, would no doubt find this kind of speculation distasteful, and rightly so. His writings remind us that her importance lies in her intellectual and moral clarity, not in tabloid curiosities. But Godwin's book belongs to a different genre entirely. She describes it as a female perspective on Thatcher, an attempt to rediscover the other Margaret, a woman of power, emotion, and she suggests hidden passions. She says she was told by various sources, including the novelist and former Minister Jonathan Aitken, would you believe Jonathan Aitken, that Thatcher had an early romantic involvement and later a possible affair with Humphrey Atkins, the handsome yet politically undistinguished Northern Ireland secretary. The evidence, rumours, anecdotes, and the ever-reliable whisper of knowledgeable circles, and why did he get promotion when he really didn't deserve it? In other words, gossip. Now, there is no there is no doubt that Thatcher was flirtatious, but to move from flirtation to legs in the air, I think, is stretching credibility and propriety. What Godwin has really unearthed is not new historical material, but a contemporary hunger for subplots in the lives of public figures. We're living in an age where political biography risks becoming psychological voyeurism. Thatcher, who was famously disciplined, driven, and almost monastic in her sense of duty, is now being reimagined through the lens of a 21st century culture that defines character by private conduct rather than public achievement. It's as though if you're going to be in number 10, you have to be staining the sofa in a sort of Boris Johnson type way. Wah! Stain the sofa, why? Yet the historical record tells us quite another story. Dennis Thatcher was, by all accounts, the stabilising force of her life, the golden thread, as she called him. And their marriage was not flamboyant, but it was durable and deeply companionate. There was no scandal, no hint of impropriety in half a century together. Charles Moore's letters and interviews show a woman who was sometimes lonely, often exhausted, but entirely devoted to her family and her sense of mission. And it's true, of course, that Thatcher could charm. Many men, Francois Mitterrand among them, commented on her magnetism. She was described as having the eyes of Caligula and the mouth of Marilyn Monroe. Alan Clark confessed to admiring her dainty ankles. But to confuse charisma with impropriety is intellectually lazy. Power attracts fascination. It doesn't imply misconduct. And this is why Godwin's affair hypothesis feels so hollow. It relies not on documentation, but on a change in cultural expectations, and we now assume that any powerful figure must have had a hidden private life, as if fidelity were incompatible with ambition. But Margaret Thatcher, for all her faults, was not Bill Clinton, nor JFK, nor Boris Johnson, nor indeed John Major, eggs for breakfast. Her vices were political, not personal. And it's also worth noting that Godwin's other main claim, that Thatcher was neurodiverse, was taken more seriously by experts than her sexual allegations. The former might actually contribute to understanding her mental focus and detachment. The latter simply titillates. In the end, what is striking is not the supposed revelation, but the reaction to it. More's restrained wince says everything. This is not biography, it's retroactive scandal-mongering. Thatcher's life and leadership were full of contradictions, her puritanism and her ruthlessness, her femininity and her ferocity, but they deserve to be analysed politically and philosophically, not reduced to bedroom speculation. The Iron Lady's real intimacy was with her cause. She was married first and foremost to her sense of duty and her conviction that Britain had lost its moral fibre, and if she flirted, it was with risk, not with her colleagues. And perhaps that is why these claims will not last. The evidence is wafer thin, the tone prurient, and the timing coinciding with her centenary opportunistic. What endures, however, is the lesson that greatness invites projection. Each generation reinvents its heroes in its own image, and our image, that means turning even the most disciplined of figures into subjects for gossip and scandal. But the truth, as Charles Moore and anyone who's read his brilliant biography will know, is that Thatcher was not defined by her passions, but by her purpose. And the gossip will fade as the legacy remains.